The Oversight Committee chamber was a place built for rules, yet today it felt like a stage built for confrontation. The air was sharp with the scent of polished wood and fresh coffee, the kind of mix you only notice when the room is unnaturally still. Jasmine Crockett stepped into the doorway, her silhouette cut against the bright white lights overhead, casting a long shadow across the marble floor. The first sound was her heels' crisp measured clicks echoing off the walls, each one carrying a weight that cameras couldn't capture. Photographers shifted in their seats, lenses rising like a firing squad, ready to catch every frame. Click, click, click. Flashes burst, freezing her mid-stride. Dark suit, perfectly tailored hair, sleek eyes, forward unshaken. Conversations at the long, polished desks, faltered voices, dipping just enough for the sound of her steps to dominate the space. She didn't rush. She didn't scan the crowd. She walked as if every square of tile knew her name. Somewhere in the back row, a reporter lowered his pen, sensing something about to happen, something bigger than the day's agenda. Because this wasn't just another hearing. This was a collision waiting to happen. And before the gavel even struck, the energy in the room had already shifted. The fight wasn't just about policy, it was about power. And Jasmine Crockett had just walked into the center of it. At the far end of the long committee table sat Marjorie Taylor Greene. Posture, rigid eyes locked forward with the kind of stare that dares you to look away first. Her fingers tapped once, twice against a neat stack of papers, the rhythm almost lost under the distant hum of cameras. The corners of her mouth curled ever so slightly as if she already knew the fight was hers to win. This wasn't their first collision. The history between Greene and Crockett was more than political, it was personal. Months earlier, during a heated debate on voting rights, they had clashed so fiercely that the chair had to bring the gavel down twice just to restore order. Greene had accused Crockett of defending what she called corruption and chaos. Crockett had answered with stories from her district, stories of neighbors standing in line for hours just to vote, of young men turned away over a typo on their ID. That day ended without resolution, but the wound never healed. And here they were again under the blinding lights, carrying every unsaid word from that last battle into this one. To Greene, this hearing was her chance to push Crockett into the corner. To Crockett, it was a test not just of patience, but of whether truth could stand its ground against volume. This wasn't just another item on the Oversight Committee's calendar. The hearing was live-streamed to millions, carried on every major news network, dissected by political analysts before the first statement was even made. For Jasmine Crockett, the stakes were razor sharp. A single misstep here wouldn't just mean a bad headline. It could give her opponents the ammunition to brand her as weak, unfocused, or unfit to lead. For Marjorie Taylor Greene, this was a chance to score a defining clip for her base, to paint Crockett as a defender of corruption, a politician who hides behind lofty speeches while ignoring the real issues. Every question asked, every pause taken, every flicker of expression on their faces could and would be clipped, shared, and spun into a narrative that would outlive the hearing itself. In the world of modern politics, the courtroom isn't the only place where verdicts are delivered. Here in front of the cameras, public opinion can shift in seconds, and reputations can be built or broken before the gavel even falls. The chair gave a brief nod. The red light on the microphone blinked to life in front of Marjorie Taylor Greene. She leaned in, elbows, planted, eyes fixed on Jasmine Crockett with the precision of a marksman lining up a target. Congresswoman Crockett, she began, her voice smooth but laced with steel. You've made a career out of defending criminals and excusing lawlessness. She didn't stop to breathe. You stand here claiming to fight for justice, but your record tells a different story, one of protecting the corrupt and undermining the very institutions you swore to uphold. The words landed like hammer strikes, one after another, designed not just to challenge policy, but to carve into character. Greene's tone rose half a step, now aiming directly for the watching cameras. You are a danger to the integrity of this country, and the American people deserve to know whose side you're really on. Gasps rippled quietly through the room. Somewhere a pen scratched faster against paper. This wasn't debate, it was an opening salvo in a fight meant to draw blood. The cameras didn't just stay on the two women. They swept the room, capturing the silent verdicts written across the faces of other committee members. One senator leaned back with a faint, satisfied smile as if savoring the spectacle. Another shifted uncomfortably in his seat, jaw tightening, eyes flicking between Greene and Crockett like a man watching two storms collide. Across the room, a staffer's pen hovered over a legal pad, frozen mid-word, unwilling to miss a second. Outside the hearing chamber, the lens cut to split screens. In a corner cafe in Atlanta, a group of retirees leaned closer to the TV coffee mugs, forgotten in their hands. In a suburban living room, a family sat forward on the couch, the father muttering under his breath, the mother's brow furrowed in silent judgment. In a bustling break room, co-workers gathered around a wall-mounted screen, half with raised eyebrows, half with smirks. Every camera, every viewer, every room watching, whether sipping coffee or scrolling on a phone, knew one thing. The opening blows had landed, and the next move could tip the fight. Through the barrage of accusations, Jasmine Crockett didn't flinch. Her eyes stayed locked on the stack of documents in front of her, scanning each page with slow precision, as if Green's voice was nothing more than background noise. The corner of her pen tapped lightly against the paper, not in agitation but in rhythm, like someone marking time. Her face was unreadable. No raised brow, no clenched jaw, just a quiet, focused stillness. To the cameras, it looked almost defiant, a refusal to be baited into a reaction. Somewhere in the minds of those watching, the question formed, what is she waiting for? It wasn't the stillness of someone defeated. It was the stillness of someone holding a card the other side didn't know existed yet. The gavel struck once. We'll take a 15-minute recess. Chairs scraped back, papers shuffled, but no one was really moving, not in any way that felt casual. The air in the chamber was thick, as if the words from minutes earlier were still hanging in it, refusing to fade. Conversations sparked in tight clusters, whispered exchanges between aides, hurried notes passed from hand to hand. Green stood near her seat, speaking low to an advisor, her expression sharp, every nod deliberate. Across the room, Jasmine Crockett remained seated, flipping one page in her folder with unhurried fingers. She didn't look at anyone. She didn't need to. Around her, the soundscape was a study in tension, the distant hum of the overhead lights, the faint hiss of air conditioning, the click of a pen being opened and closed too many times. This wasn't rest. This was the quiet before the next strike. Footsteps echoed softly across the chamber, slower than the shuffle of aides, more deliberate than idle movement. Congressman Jamie Raskin emerged from the side aisle, his expression unreadable. No cameras seemed to follow him, almost as if they didn't notice he was moving. He stopped beside Jasmine Crockett's seat. Without a word to anyone else, he slipped a slim manila envelope from under his arm and placed it gently on the polished wood in front of her. Leaning down, his voice barely above a whisper, he said 2 words for later. Then, without waiting for acknowledgement, he straightened, adjusted his jacket, and walked away as if nothing had happened. Jasmine didn't reach for the envelope. Not yet. Her hand hovered above it for a fraction of a second, then returned to her pen. Whatever was inside would wait, but the tension it brought had already entered the room like a silent storm. The envelope sat there for a long moment untouched. Then, as the hum of side conversations filled the chamber, Jasmine's fingers slid it closer. She eased the flap open, just enough for her to slip 2 fingers inside, no more than a quick motion like someone checking the time. A single glossy photograph slid halfway out. She didn't pull it completely free, just far enough for her eyes to lock onto the image. Her expression shifted, subtle but unmistakable. The calm stillness that had defined her since the hearing began was gone, replaced by something sharper. A flicker of disbelief, a shadow of anger, and the faintest trace of a knowing smile. In less than a heartbeat, she slipped the photo back inside, pressed the flap closed, and set the envelope back exactly where it had been. She didn't look around. She didn't need to, but anyone watching closely in the room or through a screen knew it. Whatever was in that envelope wasn't just important. It was a game changer. The recess ended. The gavel struck twice. Marjorie Taylor Greene wasted no time. As soon as her microphone lit up, she leaned forward, voice cutting through the room like broken glass. Congresswoman Crockett, she said the people in your district deserve better than a representative who hides behind theatrics and legal jargon. She flipped through a binder with exaggerated precision, pulling out a page and holding it up for the cameras. Let's talk about your actual record. Failed initiatives, mismanaged funds, court cases that fell apart under your watch. That's your legacy. A few heads turned toward Jasmine, searching for a reaction. She gave them nothing. Green's tone sharpened further, dripping with condescension. Frankly, I question whether you're even capable of handling the responsibility of this office. Maybe you were better suited for the courtroom drama you seem so desperate to relive, rather than serving the American people. The words hit harder than before, not just questioning her politics, but her competence, her worthiness to be there at all. And still, Jasmine didn't speak. Green barely paused for breath when another microphone came to life. Jim Jordan leaned forward from 2 seats down, sleeves rolled up, his voice quick and relentless. "Congresswoman, answer the question. Yes or no, did you sign off on those expenditures?" Jasmine opened her mouth to respond, but Green cut back in before she could finish. "Don't dodge, Crockett. The American people want the truth." Jordan jumped in again, overlapping her words. "Yes or no, Congresswoman, it's a simple question." The rhythm became a volley, Green, Jordan, Green again. Their voices stacking, slicing, leaving no space for a measured answer. To the cameras, it looked like dominance. 2 aggressive interrogators pressing a single target, framing her silence as guilt. A murmur ran through the room. Even some on the committee shifted in their seats, sensing the imbalance. But Jasmine's pen kept moving across the page in front of her. She wasn't ready to play their game. Not yet. When the barrage finally paused for half a breath, Jasmine lifted her eyes. Her voice came low, even the kind of tone that forces people to lean in to hear it. "Mr. Chairman," she said, not looking at Green or Jordan, "I will answer the question when I'm allowed to speak without being interrupted." The room stilled for a second. Green's lips tightened. Jordan's jaw shifted. "I have the right to use my full time," Jasmine continued, each word measured, "and I will not yield it simply because my colleagues prefer to shout over me." She didn't raise her voice, but the authority in it cut through louder than any outburst. On the split screens broadcasting nationwide, viewers began to notice the shift. In living rooms, heads nodded. In coffee shops, murmurs of approval spread. Even a few committee members who had been silent now leaned back, eyes narrowing, reassessing. The calm wasn't weakness. It was control, and people were starting to feel it. The committee room was still buzzing when Jasmine pushed her chair back. The sound, that single scrape of wood on tile, cut through every side conversation. She rose slowly, leaving the stack of documents neatly arranged on the table. No binder, no legal pad, no prepared remarks. Just the slim manila envelope resting in her hand. She didn't rush. Her gaze swept the panel, lingering on Green, then Jordan, then the chairman. Without a word, she stepped forward into the open space between the witness table and the committee dais. The camera zoomed in one frame at a time, catching the calm precision of every movement. Whatever was about to happen, everyone in that room and everyone watching from home knew this wasn't going to be routine testimony. This was about to be something else entirely. Jasmine stopped in the center of the open floor. She held the envelope in one hand, her fingers sliding the flap open with quiet precision. No rustling of papers, no dramatic sigh, just the soft, deliberate sound of a photograph being pulled free. She raised it slowly, arm extending, until the glossy print caught the overhead lights. The cameras locked in zoom lenses, tightening on the image, though the public feed wouldn't show it. Not yet. For a moment, she didn't speak. She simply stood there, the photo visible to every committee member and every camera in the room. The silence thickened until it felt like the walls themselves were holding their breath. Somewhere in the gallery, a cough was stifled. A pen rolled off a desk, and still Jasmine said nothing. Letting the weight of that image speak first. The word was almost a whisper, but the room heard it. The first second passed. Jasmine didn't move, the photograph still raised. The cameras panned, searching, hunting for reactions. 5 MTG's eyes narrowed. Her jaw tightened. She shifted in her seat. 8. The confident set of her shoulders began to falter. A flicker of uncertainty crossed her face. 10. Now her lips parted, not to speak, but because her breath had quickened. 12. In that final beat, the transformation was complete. The smirk was gone. The spark of control extinguished. What remained was a face caught between panic and disbelief, broadcast live to every screen in America. And Jasmine finally lowered the photo, ready to speak. The photo hung in the air for one last heartbeat. Jasmine's eyes locked on MTG, not angry, not mocking, just steady. Her voice came slow, each syllable deliberate enough to land like a hammer. "This is your politics." No one moved. It was as if the sound had been sucked out of the room, the whir of the cameras, the shuffle of papers, even the faint hum of the lights overhead. Gone. For 3 long seconds, the only thing that existed was that sentence and the silence that swallowed it. Somewhere in the back row, a reporter's pen froze mid-word. On every screen in America, the still frame of Jasmine holding her ground burned into memory. By the time the hearing adjourned, the clip had already escaped the room. 12 seconds of silence, one line, and the image of Jasmine Crockett standing with that photo. On Twitter, or X, as it now called itself, the hashtag #12-second silence shot to #1 in under an hour. Facebook feeds lit up with side-by-side stills, Jasmine mid-stance, MTG mid-blink. On YouTube, reaction channels uploaded breakdowns before the committee staff had even packed their papers. Cable news anchors spoke over looping footage, debating whether this was a mic drop moment or the start of something bigger. Political podcasts cut emergency episodes. TikTok users stitched the clip with gas cheers and slow-motion replays. By nightfall, the phrase, "This is your politics," had crossed state lines, party lines, and language barriers. The hearing wasn't just an event anymore. It was a cultural moment. By morning, the nation had chosen sides. On one end, supporters called it masterful composure, proof that staying silent under fire can be more devastating than shouting back. Editorials praised Jasmine for turning restraint into a weapon and showing what leadership under pressure looks like. They clipped those 12 seconds into motivational reels, pairing them with orchestral music in words like integrity and strength. On the other end, critics were just as loud. Conservative talk shows labeled it a cheap stunt, accusing Jasmine of ambushing a fellow representative with a premeditated smear. If she had real evidence, one commentator sneered, she wouldn't need theater. Hashtag split in two, 12-second silence versus hashtag political hit job. And somewhere in between were millions of Americans watching, replaying, deciding which story they believed. In a corner coffee shop in Detroit, the morning rush slowed as the clip played on a mounted TV. A man in a delivery uniform shook his head and said, "That's how you do it. No yelling, no cussing, just the truth." In a small kitchen in El Paso, a grandmother rinsed dishes with one eye on her tablet. Her teenage granddaughter leaned over whispering. She didn't even flinch. Across an open-plan office in Seattle, workers clustered around a laptop. Someone rewound the 12 seconds for the third time. Another murmured, "Imagine holding your ground like that in front of the whole country." The clip was no longer just politics. It was about justice, about truth, about how a person carries themselves when the pressure could crush them. And in those living rooms, break rooms, and sidewalks, people began seeing a bit of themselves in Jasmine Crockett. The next morning, the headlines were split like the country itself. 12 seconds that shook. Congress blared across one paper. Another read Crockett's stunt or statement. Cable news ran split-screen debates, pundits talking over each other as the same 12 seconds looped silently beside them. Yet while the noise built around her, Jasmine Crockett stayed quiet. She made no public comment on the photo's details, no names, no dates, no captions. When asked, she only repeated one line, "The truth doesn't have to be shouted to be heard." For some, it was a sign of discipline. For others, a sign she had nothing real to offer. But for millions watching, it was exactly the kind of restraint that had made those 12 seconds unforgettable. Viewers who had followed the story from the very first moment could now see it all in one arc. From the instant Jasmine Crockett stepped into that hearing room, lights, glaring cameras, flashing the low hum of political hostility in the air, she had been under siege. They remembered the early assaults from MTG, the tag team interruptions from Jim Jordan. They remembered the stillness, how she never bit at the bait, never let her voice crack, never rushed. And then the envelope, the 12 seconds of silence, the line that cut through the noise. In hindsight, it was clear none of it was accidental. The calm was part of the strategy. The silence was part of the statement. The restraint was the real weapon. Jasmine hadn't just survived that day, she had owned it. And for those watching, the journey wasn't just about politics anymore. It was about seeing how a person faced with pressure meant to break them could turn it into the very thing that made them unforgettable. The hearing room is empty now. The chairs are pushed and the microphones silent, the bright lights dimmed. But somewhere in the minds of millions, that 12-second silence still hangs heavy, unbroken, unforgettable. And so we leave you with this. If you had one moment to reveal the truth, would you rush or would you wait? Lesson. Sometimes the loudest voice in the room is silence. Jasmine Crockett showed that you don't have to meet aggression with aggression. By holding her ground and choosing her moment, she turned pressure into power and silence into the sharpest weapon of all. In life, whether it's in politics, business, or family, patience and timing can reveal the truth more powerfully than any outburst. If stories like this inspire you stories about truth, justice, and standing strong under pressure, then don't just watch and scroll. Hit subscribe now and turn on the bell so you never miss the moments that the mainstream won't show you. Your next favorite story is just one click away.